It's my pleasure to introduce today's keynote speaker, Jaime Casap. He is the Global Education Senior Evangelist at Google Incorporated. Jaime evangelizes the power and potential of the web, technology, and Google tools in education. He helps educational organizations across the world find ways to utilize these tools in support of new learning models. His team is responsible for bringing Google tools to millions of administrators, teachers, and students across the globe. Jaime was named one of Tech and Learning's top 10 most influential in education and a South by Southwest EDU Distinguished Speaker. Jaime serves on the Science Foundation Arizona Board of Directors, on the Board of Directors for New Global Citizens, and on the advisory board for the Arizona State University's Department of Information Systems, and is a member of the Digital Learning Council. In addition to his role at Google, Jaime is a faculty associate at Arizona State University, where he teaches graduate classes in leadership, innovation, and public policy. Please join me in welcoming Jaime Casap.
First, thank you for having me. I think they're going to adjust the mic as I go. Sometimes I scream, so you got to, it's like a DJ. You got to be there ready to roll. Thank you for having me. I heard about this conference for many years. It's exciting for me to be here to talk to you folks. I remember I was in high school when the Space Shuttle Challenger tragedy happened. I remember we were watching it in our classroom on the TV monitors that we had. So this is part of my life, one of those moments that I remember. And so it's been interesting for me to reflect on that experience and actually to go back and read about the whole thing and read accounts and things that are happening during that time. So exciting for me to be here. As Don mentioned, my name is Jaime Casap or Jaime Casap, depending on what language you speak. I think we're going to do this one in English. I've been at Google for 8 years. I'm responsible for what we do in education from a global perspective. I launched Google Apps for Education in the university space. I launched Google Apps in K-12. How many Google Apps do we have? Awesome. And launched Chromebooks in education a couple of years ago as well. So my job is to think about how our tools work in education. We think about where education is going and how we can help in that process. So just to kind of get started, before I even start with contact information, I was fortunate enough to come up with my wife, who's also doing a session. She's an executive director at New Global Citizens, and she's doing a session on global IQ at 12. And if I don't pitch her session, I'm going to have a really long airplane ride home today. So I want to make sure I pitch that as well. Contact information. Twitter, Google+, I also write a blog on education. I have a bunch of articles that I'm actually editing right now that I will be posting. Twitter, Google+, great way to kind of keep the conversation going so we can, whether it's a hashtag, whether you have a question for me, whether there's announcements that I post, articles that we're part of or that I find interesting or that my team finds interesting. This is a great way to kind of keep the conversation going as I travel around the world and stay connected with that education community. So that's contact information. Now, why I'm passionate about education, why we're all passionate about education is because I think many of us understand that education is what disrupts poverty. Right? Like nothing else in society, education is what's possible. It gives students the potential to live that American dream. And I know this firsthand because I'm a first-generation American. My mother came to the United States from Argentina. I was born in Hell's Kitchen, New York. Not the Hell's Kitchen that you go visit today, but the one back in the 70s and 80s. And I showed up at Kiss 111, and she didn't speak any English, so I showed up at Kiss 111. They said, welcome to Kiss 111. And I said, okay. So English is technically my second language. But I'm that kid that grew up in that urban environment, minority, growing up in a ghetto environment, single mom, on welfare. And I am standing here in front of you because I didn't want that life for me. And I didn't like the environment that I was growing up in. So through education, hard work, through high school, graduating college, graduating graduate school, I was able to live that American dream and be here standing in front of you many years later. So that's the power that education can have for an individual. Now, it also has extreme potential to change a family's destiny in just one generation, right? And I think that's the exciting thing about what we can do with education. Because now I have two kids of my own. I have a 21-year-old and a 12-year-old. And by the way, nothing, for those of you who have young children who's on their way to become 21, nothing prepares you for that moment when you're sitting in a restaurant and your daughter asks the waiter what kind of tequila they have. Because you're sitting there thinking, weren't you just ordering Happy Meals a couple of years ago? So anyway, so I have a 21-year-old and a 12-year-old, and my 21-year-old is in her third year of college. And I never told her she had to go to college. She never asked if she had to go to college. She just assumed she was going to college because I went to college. Because everyone in her family, everyone around her went to college. She assumed she was going to graduate school because I went to graduate school. And she also assumes I'm paying for it. But that's okay. That's a good problem to have, right? And my 12-year-old has been looking at colleges since he was 6. More importantly, their perspective or their kind of projection of what life is possible, what's in front of them, is completely different than it was for me growing up the way I did. So their possibilities are endless. And that's the power and potential of education. Now, we've been doing better in education since the 70s when I was in school, but we still have this achievement gap that we need to deal with, right? By the time a kid is 4 years old, there's an 18-month academic gap between a poor kid and a rich kid, right? Low-income students that are in 6th grade can't do math at the same level that affluent kids do. And even students that do really, really well in school have a lower chance of graduating from college or going to college. All these things that we're dealing with in the achievement gap, we need to be able to fix, hopefully, through education. So that gap isn't closing fast enough, as far as I'm concerned. Now, even if it was, we still need to get to the point where we need to change what learning looks like in the classroom. I was just in Ontario, Canada, a couple of months ago, and they've gone through this tremendous transformation of buckling down, working with their unions, working with their government, working with those in the community to take their kind of staggering literacy rates, graduation rates, and transform that and increased it by 20, 30, 40, 50% in terms of what they were able to accomplish. But even in that case, when I was up there visiting, what struck me was that even though now, today, they're up there ranked with some of the best nations in terms of their test scores and graduation rates, and they're in the same conversations of Finland and South Korea and Ontario, Canada, they aren't resting there. They want to get to the next stage. They need to transform what learning looks like, even beyond what they've been able to accomplish. And that's because we're living in a new economy, and we have to come to grips with that, right? If you think about what's happened in the last couple of decades, we've basically moved into two categories. We have high-wage, high-skill work, and low-wage, low-skill work. In the middle there, we've lost a lot of opportunity, a lot of jobs in that middle-skill, middle-wage group. And even within that group, the skills required for those jobs have changed tremendously, have increased tremendously. In 1973, about 28% of the jobs required a college degree. And that was cool because we were producing about 30% of Americans with a college degree. And by the time we get to 2020, that number increases to about 65%. And so we have to deal with this new economy where the skill set is different than it was back in the 70s. Now, what's exciting to me is that for most of history, where you were born, the research resources that you have at your disposal, the family that you grew up in, and even your proximity to the library are all factors in your academic success. They all determine whether or not you can be academically successful. And this is transforming in our lifetime. I remember, for me, growing up in Hell's Kitchen, we had the Columbus Library on 51st Street in 10th Avenue. This was the resource capital of my world, right? Every school in the community, public, private, every person who lived in the community had this resource center to use for their information. And it closed at 5 o'clock. It wasn't open on the weekends. You would show up and look for a book through the card catalog and go get the book, and it wasn't there. It wasn't the best place to get information, but this was my own choice. And even, I had basketball practice till like 4:45, and sometimes I had 10 minutes to go to the library and look for information for my research paper or whatever it is that I need to do. This was our resource capital of the world. And this is transformed in our lifetime. Because today we have 100,000 Columbus libraries at our fingertips. We have all of the world's information that continuously grows sitting at our fingertips. And yet, when I think about or look at my 12-year-old 7th grade classroom, it basically looks the same as it did when I was in school. Even some of the policies are the same, though the technology has changed. When I was in 7th grade, I wasn't allowed to bring or wear my Casio calculator watch. You guys remember that? And today, my 4-year-old isn't allowed to have his iPhone in class. Right? He's got to check it in. Right? So even the policies are the same, but the classrooms are the same. Yet the world's information is at our fingertips like never before. And so how do we take advantage of that is what we're in this stage. And I know we've been talking about technology and education for a really long time. First, motion pictures were going to change education. Then movies and TV were going to change. TV was going to change education. And you've been talking about the computer in education, which was released in the 1960s. And each one of these were going to revolutionize education and change it completely. It was going to be the new advancement since the printing press, which of course brought us the worksheet. But these things were going to change education. We've been talking about it for a long time. So what's different today? I propose 3 things are different today. First, we have a lot more information on the learning science space. We understand that every individual not necessarily learns in a different way, but has their own limited abilities in different subjects, right? Where one student might be able to learn math better than history, and another student might be able to understand through reading better than they do through visual. And it's not even from a learning style perspective, but just that we recognize that individuals learn subjects at different paces, in different ways, and people pick up things in different time frames. We know all this now. We have all this information. Yet, back to my 12-year-old classroom, he's learning the subjects at the same pace, in the same way, at the same time that every other student in that classroom is learning. And yet we have all this information about how learning can be relevant and engaging and personal, and that students can help drive some of that learning through their expectations about what they can do through learning. So we know that learning is personal. So that's 1. 2, we recognize we have to come to grips with the fact that the web and technology have integrated into the core of our lives. That's fundamental for us to think about. Now think about this. Let me ask you a question. How many of you have not used the web today? Right. And how long did that take us? 5 years, 6 years? Do you remember we used to have to call the internet with our home phones? And the internet would be like, I can't talk to you right now. Or would hang up on you. And what was our reward? A reward for that experience was we got to web pages that had words with links to other word pages, to other pages that had links and words, and we were so excited about that. And every once in a while, somebody would include a picture, and we'd be like, oh, there's a picture coming. It's going to take about 20 minutes, and there's a picture coming. And today, one of the announcements this morning was like, we're sorry about the internet, please don't throw things at us. Because I watch teachers lose their minds if they don't have good bandwidth at conferences. They turn into mobs with pitchforks. On our flight from Phoenix through Philadelphia, we were on a 757, and everyone was looking around, oh my God, we're on an airplane that doesn't have internet. What are we going to do for the next 3 hours without internet? While we're traveling at 535 miles an hour at 35,000 feet. Right? How long did that take us? It wasn't that long. But we have to understand that the technology and the web has integrated into that part of our lives to the point where most of you wake up in the morning and you flip on the web before you even get out of bed. You reach for your phone and you're checking an email or the news or a website. And it's like the new cigarette, right? You wake up and light it up. That's how much difference there is today with how integrated technology and the web has become part of our own lives. And even at work, we now use our own technology more than sometimes we use the technology that's provided for us. I tweeted out a couple last week, or actually this week, I tweeted out, you want to have some fun today? Why don't you ask a 10-year-old or a young kid to explain what Cyber Monday is and where Cyber Monday came from? And they have no idea what they're talking about because they can't understand the concept of Cyber Monday. Because Cyber Monday happened because we used to go to work to use technology. We used to go to work to use the web. We used to go to work because the applications were better. Most of us didn't have access to home. So we went on that Monday after Black Friday and we spent the day shopping instead of working. And that's where Cyber Monday came from. And now kids, like, I don't understand why you can't just shop on Friday or any day you want. They don't understand the concept of Cyber Monday. Even for me, working at Google, I feel like I have better bandwidth at home than I do in the office. So when I work from home, but when I go to the office, I complain about how slow the internet access is at Google because I have better access at home. That shift has happened, and we don't even recognize or realize that this shift of being able to use our personal devices at home more so than at work has happened. And then the third factor is the web generation. Those kids today that are part of the web generation, and more importantly, those kids that are coming into our schools, those 4 or 5-year-olds right now that are going to be coming into our schools during the next school year. I want you to think about this. I want you to think about a 5-year-old, that 5-year-old, that 4.5-year-old who's going to be coming into your schools next year. And then I want you to look at your device, whatever you have in your hand, whether it's your laptop, whether it's your phone, or whether it's your new pair of Google Glass that I don't even have, whatever that new technology is that you have, I want you to think about that 5-year-old, and I want you to realize that that technology is the worst technology that 5-year-old has ever seen in their life. It's their Commodore 64. Right? They're going to find that technology when they're 25 years old in a thrift store in a 50-cent box, and they're going to bring it home and put it up on a shelf like a museum piece. And they're going to reminisce and laugh about how oh, my father and mother or teacher used to use this, and they used to have to charge it every day. Ha ha ha. This is the generation of kids that are coming into our school system. And we have to ask ourselves, are we ready for them? Are we ready for what their expectations about what learning looks like? This is a picture of my 12-year-old within the last year, during the last football season. And I'm sitting on the couch over here, and he's sitting there on the left. He's supposed to be watching football with me, but he's not. concentrating on something else. Apparently, he discovered this new game called Minecraft. And on one machine, he's playing Minecraft. And on the other machine, he's watching YouTube videos, teaching himself how to play Minecraft. And he's moved from watching videos to collaborating and communicating and building things with others, to now he's creating videos. And one of the things that he wants for Christmas is a screen capture software so that he can create better videos, so that he can teach other kids how to play Minecraft. And just a couple of months ago, it's a weekend, and so I said, hey, we've got to go to bed. And my 12-year-old says, I can't go to bed right now, I need a couple minutes. I have some customers. Apparently, my 12-year-old is a casino owner, and he had some people in his casino playing games that he designed and built with others, that he knows the P&L line for, that he knows what betting line to use, and he's created this whole world for himself. These are the kids that are coming into our school. Now, what I'm saying is that their expectations are different, but it's also important to point out that they aren't different than we are. You know, I would be wary of speakers who stand here and tell you, this generation is different than you are. They're wired differently. They can multitask. They can do 4 things at the same time. Because we all know that's not true. They do 4 things at the same time poorly. They can only do 1 thing at a time. But how they learn is different than the way we learn. What their expectations of learning are different than they were for us. When we expected people to teach us, they expect to be able to learn whenever they want. They're able to go and get information. They're able to learn from each other. They're able to learn from different sources. And even the way they learn is different. My daughter and I were reminiscing about the Nintendo 64 that we went out together when she was 5 years old. And we remember the games that came from the Nintendo 64 used to come up with big, thick booklets of instructions on how to play that game. And you used to sit there and read the book and learn how to play the game before you started playing. Have you opened up a PlayStation 3 or an Xbox video game lately? There's no instruction manual in there. Kids are learning as they go. The instructions are coming within the game, completely different. Project-based learning for video games. Now, this generation is expecting it to be on, to work whenever they want it to work, to be able to use any device that they want to be able to use. They want to be able to access all their information whenever they want. They want to be able to work with each other wherever they are. This is the generation that has a different set of expectations about what learning looks like than they were for us. Now, speaking of this generation, I love to talk to students. I talk to students whenever I can. I've already booked some things to talk to students next year, and that's usually the most exciting part of my job, is to talk to students, especially students who grew up the way I grew up, or growing up the way I grew up, which are either minority or poor or living in the conditions that I grew up in. And I like to talk to the students because for me, it's my responsibility to be able to stand in front of them and say, look, if I can do this and work hard and get my education, you can do this, and you can have that American dream, you can live the way you want to live. And it's important for me to be able to do that. It's my responsibility. But I also stand in front of them because I have messages for them. And the first one that I do is I don't ask them what they want to be when they grow up. I don't tell them that they should go to college to become engineers or doctors or lawyers. Because a lot of these kids, especially the kids who are growing up the way I grew up, don't understand what those things are. They don't know what a lawyer is. They don't know what an engineer is. So instead, what I ask them is, what problem do you want to solve? What problem spins in your head every day? What are you interested in? What impact do you want to have? And then I challenge them to go back and think about what education, and I use quotes around the word education, they're going to need to solve that problem. What skills, what abilities, information? What can they watch? What videos are available? Who should they follow? Who can they contact? What classes can they take online right now? I tell them that the access that they have to this education is more than just school. That they have the ability, through technology, through the web, to be able to access all this information so that they can build the skills, the knowledge, the abilities that they need to solve the problems that they're interested in solving. So that's what I focus on. That's what I try to tell them. I also tell them that one of the things that happens in education is we try to use the word failure. We need to teach our kids how to fail. And I'm not a fan of the word failure. It's like a black and white word for me. You either fail or succeed. For kids who grew up or growing up the way I grew up, they see failure all around them. They see failure in their personal lives, in their family lives, in their communities, and failure has that negative connotation. I like the word iteration. Because iteration happens whether something good happens or something bad happens. Or something works or something doesn't work. Just because something is successful doesn't mean that you're done iterating. We live in an economy where we're constantly iterating. How many of you use Google today? Okay? Do you know that the Google that you used this morning is different than the Google that was on last night? That we've iterated Google and improved it last night. I think the last number I remember is that we make about 500 to 600 updates to Google every year. So that means about twice a day, you're using a completely different version of Google than you were the night before. That's iteration, and that's the economy that we live in. So iteration is critical for kids to understand how to experiment, how to take the next step, and whether something's successful or not doesn't matter because you're always iterating. I also tell them that they need to learn how to collaborate and that they're fighting the system because education is set up like an individual sport, but we live in a team-based world. And an individual student gets a grade, takes a test, moves up, graduates on their own, and then we say, good luck, go work with others. And in reality, the world that we live in is team-based. Imagine as a teacher, you handed out a test to students, and at the end of the test, two kids came up to you holding the test together, and they said, we did this together. What would your reaction be? Now, turn that into the real world, and imagine me going up to Larry or Sergey and saying, here's the education plan for the world. I did it all by myself. I didn't get any help. No, my parents didn't help me. I did it by myself. What was the reaction? We live in a team-based world where collaboration is part of that. And I also talk to them about the fact that collaboration isn't just working together. That's just part of it. What we need to teach, why we need to teach collaboration to our kids is because collaboration is also the ability to look at your work and say that this is going to get better when I work with others on it. That my thoughts are only going to get better, my ideas are only going to get better when I work with others on this idea. Collaboration means being able to look at, to read, or to listen to someone else and ask thoughtful questions and follow up. Collaboration also means the ability to change your mind. The ability to look at something, to read something, to see somebody else's point of view and say, you know what, that makes sense. Let's do that. We're not teaching our kids real collaboration, which is more than just working together. It's actually understanding that you're part of a bigger solution. And then I talk to them about making sure that they're not just digital consumers, that they become digital leaders. And what I mean by that is that digital citizenship is a minimum requirement for the new economy. And that we need to create digital leaders. And so what they post online, what they share online, what they do online are the reasons why they go to college, and the reasons why they get that internship, and the reasons why they get that job, and not the reasons that they don't. We have to ask ourselves, who's teaching them how to do that? Who's teaching them to be digital citizens? We teach them how to be good citizens. We teach them how to be American citizens. teach them how to hopefully be global citizens, like my wife's class. But we need to teach them how to be digital citizens and how to be digital leaders. So they should be watching videos and creating videos. They should be reading blogs and writing blogs. They should be reading websites and looking at websites and creating websites. As a Latino, one of the questions that I always get from people is, do I want my kids to learn a second language? And I always answer, absolutely, high five. This generation of students is going to be living in a completely different world than we are. And so we have to be able to have them create those digital leadership skills that they're going to need. Now, what does that mean in the classroom? Well, what it means in the classroom is that teachers no longer have to be the Google in the room. And it made sense that teachers were the Google in the room because we needed to have a group of citizens that had some common knowledge, some information in their heads. Because we needed to be able to talk at dinner parties. Right? We wanted to make sure that everyone had common information. Because when I was a student, you asked me what happened on December 7th, 1941, for example, the date that's coming up, I would say, and if I didn't know, I would say, hang on, I'll be back in about a day and a half. I'm going to go find out. Or, so I would go look it up, or I would ask somebody that I thought that knew what the answer was. And that's where I got my information. We no longer have to do that because all the world's information is at our fingertips. And so what we have to ask ourselves, if that's no longer true, what do we have to do in the classroom? And my premise is that we have to help kids take information and convert it into intelligence. That they have information, and what we need to help them do is think about how to convert that into intelligence. And I do this when I teach graduate classes, but I also do it in my personal life, right? When I am with my kids, and my kids ask me a question that I can look up, my favorite response to them is, listen, I think you forget, I work for a search engine, I'm not actually the search engine. Go look it up yourself. And it's my responsibility to follow up. What did you find? What did it mean? Did you check the source? Did you vet it? Did you confirm it? How do you apply it? Those are my responsibilities, to follow up with what information they found so that they can take that information and convert it into the intelligence that they need. And that's what we need to make sure that we're focused on. Now, this is happening across the world. This is just happening in the United States. It's not just happening in New Hampshire. It's happening here. It's happening in Canada. It's happening everywhere. My wife and I took my kids to Peru this summer. We did the whole 2-week thing in Peru, and we were in Machu Picchu village, sitting there, having dinner, and we heard a ruckus out in the courtyard. We went out there, and there was a political rally going on for either a council member or a mayor's race or something going on, but there was a political rally going on. And the folks at this rally were wearing t-shirts. All of them were wearing t-shirts. And for those who can't read it, it says, the great change only comes through education. A great change only comes through education. And this is an understanding that a pueblo in the middle of Peru that's only accessible by either train or you hike there understands. They understand the importance of education and what it means. Or even working in Malaysia, they recognize that giving kids equal access to information and giving them access to what is available for them is critical for not only the kids' survival, but for their economy. And they put some principles in place to make sure that their kids have access to the internet, that they have 4G in the whole country, that all the kids are going to have devices, that the teaching is going to change in their classroom, and that they're going to create an environment where they continuously improve what education looks like for the benefit of our country. And this is happening across the world. And what's exciting is that the teachers today, you guys in the room, are the generation of teachers who are going to create what the new learning models look like for the next generation to come. And that's pretty exciting to think about, because we're starting to see it already. Whether some of you are using flipped classroom models, blended learning, hybrid learning, all these different project-based learning, maker models, all these things that we're seeing are happening in schools all over the world. A lot of them are happening, to be honest with you, on the cutting edge side in the United States that I see. And this generation of teachers are creating what those new learning models are going to look like. And that's pretty exciting. And speaking of teachers, I always like to say that the most important factor in a kid's education will always be the teacher in the classroom. And I remember, I've had a pretty interesting career, I've had an interesting life, and I still remember the impact that my fourth grade teacher had on my writing skills, or the impact that my sixth grade teacher had on my creativity abilities, or my ninth grade teacher who showed me math in a completely different way. And I still remember those teachers. Actually, some of them I'm friends with on baseball. And the influence and impact that they had on my life is tremendous. And that impact for teachers is so valuable for students. And sometimes for students, especially students like me, that teacher is probably the most significant person in that kid's life. And so the impact that teachers have in classrooms are absolutely critical. So when I talk to administrators, and for those administrators in the room, I say that what we need to do is make sure that these teachers have knowledge, skills, and abilities for this new world that we live in. That they have the professional development that they need. That they have the room and the space to iterate and experiment and try these new learning models. And absolutely critical that we focus on making sure that our teachers have, not only are prepared, but also have the continuous support that they need to create what these new learning models are going to look like in the future. We also have to make sure that we're investing in our future. And by that I mean with technology. Most of us walked into this room today and flipped on the lights and expected the electricity just to work. And for our students, they walk into a room and flip on the internet and expect it just to work. As a matter of fact, I would argue, based on the announcements this morning, that you guys have the same expectation. That you expect to walk in a room, flip on the internet, and just have it work. And so we have to look at technology as part of our education environment, that is no longer an option. We would never build a school and say, hey, we're only going to be able to put electricity on the first and second floor, so the third and fourth floor are going to be dark. Broadband, internet connectivity is the new electricity. And we would never have classrooms and say, look, we're only going to be able to put 10 desks in the classroom for those 30 students. They're going to have to share the desks. And so devices become the new equipment in our class desks.